If you own a home, maybe your first one, and you're about to move out, you might ask yourself the question of, should I sell it or could I rent it out and enjoy the sweet, sweet nectar of passive income? In this video, I'm going to give you 3 points to consider before you decide to rent out your first home. So stay tuned. Hey folks, Richard Walls here, and welcome to my channel if it's your first time. What this is all about is helping you with your professional branding, career development, and personal finance. Now, if that's something you'd like to see more of, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below along with the notification bell so you get notified when I post new content. And of course, if you like what you see, do me a favor, it helps me out quite a bit. Hit the like button down below as well. Now, with that said, let's get to it. For many, real estate is simply one part of a complete long-term financial strategy. It certainly is for me. This means passive income from a property or multiple properties that you'd be renting out. Now, there's no shortage of scammy or misleading programs or methods that talk about this super easy passive income, 6 figures the rest of your life. You don't have to do any work whatsoever, stress-free life. This is different. This is passive income stemming from real estate, which is a legitimate opportunity and it's a great option. However, it's not that easy and it's not for everyone. Here's the deal. It involves work, mostly upfront, because you have to renovate the property. Although hopefully, if it's your first home, maybe you've done a good amount of work to it. You've made it nice and tidy. It looks good. It's presentable. And nonetheless, you still may have to do some work before you rent it out. Then you have to market the property, and then you have to sign a tenant, which is a whole process in and of itself. So there's a lot of upfront work involved. On top of that, there's, like I mentioned earlier already, there's high upfront costs and also potential for major costs down the road. So an investment property presents itself some unique risks. Now, I mentioned I had 3 points for you to consider before renting out your house, and so let's unpack those. What I do want to mention though is I'm not going to go into detail as to whether or not your home is in a good rental market. Let's just assume that it is, and you're coming to this decision point where should you sell it or rent it out. Let's go from there. Point number 1 is how much work are you willing to do? Now, renting out your property can net you a pretty decent extra income. Of course, that depends on how much your mortgage is, taxes, HOA fees, insurance, all this other stuff. So you certainly have a lot of expenses to cover, more likely than not. But the decisions that you then have to make there's a few of them. First one is, how are you going to market the property? Are you going to market the property? Are you going to attract potential tenants? Are you going to screen them? Are you going to do all that work? Or are you going to work with a realtor to do all that for you? The second point here in this, second point, it's a sub point. A second decision point that you have to make is, are you going to be maintaining the property? Are you going to be responsible for all the maintenance calls that you might get from your tenants? Are you going to be, again, on the phone at midnight if water goes out or electricity? I mean, there's a whole host of issues that can come up, but are you going to be the person that answers that? Are you going to be collecting the payments every month? Or are you going to have a property management company to do that? Are you going to source that out? And the third consideration point is, are you going to smash the like button down below for this video if you like this video, or are you going to get somebody else to do that? If the answer to all those questions is that you're going to do it all yourself, then great, you have an appetite to do all that work. But if not, and you end up outsourcing all this work, well, consider this. Whenever you work with a realtor, it's more often than not that they're going to charge you 1 month's rent to market the property, get the tenant, have them sign, all that stuff. 1 month's rent, which is, it can be quite a lot. And the second part is with a property management company, again, that's going to be another big expense. And what they normally charge, it can be anywhere from 8 to 12% of monthly rent. So basically 8 to 12% gone of your rent. So depending on how high your expenses are for this property, that can quickly eat into any profit that you might be making. So the trade-off here, of course, is your time versus your money. And I'm not going to discuss necessarily which is better to do yourself or to outsource all this stuff. It really depends on a lot of factors, but ultimately it's down to what the financial profile of this investment is. Can you or do you want to afford to outsource all these things, or would you prefer to do it all yourself and save yourself those expenses? Point number 2 is, can you handle the upfront costs? Now, depending on the condition of the house, you may want to do some renovations or some touch-ups to make it more attractive to renters. But another cost that I think sometimes gets overlooked is the cost associated with not renting out your unit. For example, if you're doing renovations, there's a period of time where, let's say you've already moved out, renovations are taking place, it's not inhabitable. Like, you can't have a renter in there quite yet because it's simply not ready. So for that period of time, you're not collecting an income, yet you're bearing 100% of the cost burden. Now, that's just one example. Another case could be everything's ready to go, you've put it on the market, but you don't have immediate success in finding a renter or a viable tenant. That could be due to you priced it too high. It could be for a number of factors, but nonetheless, there's a period of time where you don't have a tenant in there. You are bearing 100% of the cost burden without collecting an income. Which, by the way, even if everything goes very smoothly and you find a tenant, you have immediate success, it still takes time to go back and forth with the negotiation and with the contract signing and all this stuff. So there is still a period of time, nonetheless, that you're bearing 100% of the cost. And not only that, if I can rewind a little bit and go back to the point about if you want to outsource this to a realtor to go and market the property and find a tenant, it's still not a guarantee that they will find a tenant immediately. There's still a possibility that you'll go without having a tenant for a period of time. And then, of course, when the realtor does find somebody, you still then have to pay the realtor on top of the expenses that you've had to pay all by yourself for that period of time you didn't have the renter. Point number 3 is, can you handle the risks associated with renting out a property? Just because it's passive income, it does not mean that it's risk-free. So on the house itself, as an example, the house may not appreciate a whole lot throughout the time of you owning. Of course, you're building equity, which is great, but you never know what's going to happen with the house or the area that the house is in. Hopefully, in many cases, especially in growing cities, appreciation is pretty common. It's a matter of how much. Does it keep up with inflation? Hopefully, and again, this is kind of a worst case scenario, hopefully you don't run into a situation where the value of the home depreciates. And that could be, again, a function of if the area around it deteriorates. And then during the course of the lease, or really just during the course of you owning the property and renting it out for maybe multiple years, is the potential for there to be large unexpected costs that come up. Now, I will differentiate because there are plenty of large expected costs that you need to be accounting for. You need to be accounting for the fact that the AC unit will eventually go out. It's also possible that the water heater might also go out. Those are things you may have to either just repair, hopefully, or replace entirely, which is really going to add to the cost. So you don't know exactly when that will happen, but you have to know that it will eventually. But then there's unexpected costs, and just as one example, something that maybe might not be top of mind is potentially foundation issues. Something that you don't really see, you're not really thinking about too much, but foundation issues as an example. If there's cracks, or if there's some flaw in the foundation that you have to fix, otherwise it's going to cause much bigger problems down the line. So that's something you have to correct, and depending on the extent of the issue, that can really blow up the costs, so much so that you may have to reassess whether this investment is financially viable and it actually is offering you a good return. Now, the last risk involved here is with regards to the tenant. So hopefully you've done a good enough job screening the tenant so you get a good tenant in there that treats the property well, keeps everything nice and clean, and everything's great. But if there's a risk, of course, that the tenant does not keep up with the property, does not treat it well, maybe causes certain damages or who knows what. But I mean, there's a lot of horror stories out there that I'm sure you've heard. I would say those are more the exception than the rule, so I wouldn't let that necessarily scare you away. But it is a risk. It's certainly possible. It's also certainly possible that the tenant may be unable to pay for 1 month or multiple months. And then at which point you have to work with them, you have to resolve the situation. And if worse comes to worse, hopefully it doesn't, but it's possible that you may need to evict the tenant, which again has its own legal process to do so, which causes more costs and complications downstream. So again, all this is to say that any one of those things can really impact your bottom line and impact the financial feasibility of having this investment property. And all of a sudden, it makes the passive income idea, the sort of dream here, not so dreamlike. Now, the point of me sharing all that with you is not to discourage you or scare you away from renting out your property. It's more so to educate and inform you and make you aware of really what all goes into renting out a property. And there's probably many things I didn't even get to mention in this video. Again, it's a fairly short video, but those are some of the key items. Just understanding the risks that you're taking, understanding fully the cost. And I think a lot of people view real estate investing with these rose-colored glasses. They have this really wonderful view of real estate investing and passive income that they don't really take into consideration everything that I just mentioned here, which I think you have to, especially for the casual investor. As part of just an overall financial strategy, you have to decide if everything that I mentioned, if you're good with that, then by all means proceed, do it smartly. But again, all those things are things that you need to know before you make a decision like that. And with that said, let me know in the comments below if real estate investing is a part of your financial strategy, and let me know how you've seen success with it. Would certainly love to hear stories like that, and I think everyone in the comment section can also learn from that. And folks, if you liked what you saw in this video, make sure to give me a like down below, hit the button. And also, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified when I post new videos. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.